My sister Ashley's mouth fell open in silent horror. I wasn't supposed to be here. According to them, I was dead. I froze in the doorway of the grand ballroom, and I could see my mother's face drain of color, her champagne glass suspended midair. Melissa? William Harrington's voice came from behind me. The father of the groom, and, ironically, my client, placed a hand on my shoulder. I thought you might join us. Come in, please. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the pre-wedding celebration where I officially didn't exist. Just 3 days earlier, I had been scrubbing a stubborn stain from the marble bathroom floor in William Harrington's executive suite. As the head of cleaning services, I didn't usually do the physical work anymore, but this was for a VIP client, and I still took pride in handling important jobs myself. Exceptional work as always, Miss Frost. William's voice startled me as he entered. I stood quickly, smoothing my uniform. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. We take pride in our work. You know, he leaned against the doorframe. My son is getting married this weekend. Such a wonderful time. I nodded politely, though my stomach twisted. I knew exactly who his son was marrying. The bride is a lovely girl from a good family. Ashley Frost. Works at Thompson and Richards Advertising. He smiled. Such a tragedy about her sister, though. My hands froze on the cleaning cart. Her sister. Yes, her older sister died in a car accident years ago. The mother mentioned it when we had dinner last month. So sad when families experience such loss. The cleaning solution bottle slipped from my hand, clattering loudly on the freshly cleaned floor. Are you all right? William asked, concerned. Yes, I managed, though my voice sounded distant in my own ears. Just tired. As he left, I slumped against the wall, my chest tight with the impact of his casual words. According to my mother and sister, Melissa Frost, me, had been dead for years. The shame of having a family member who cleaned toilets for a living was apparently greater than the shame of inventing a tragic death. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to the outskirts of Boston, parked at a scenic overlook, and screamed until my throat was raw. Then I called my assistant manager and told her I needed 2 days off. For the first time in 3 years. Everything okay, boss? Rosa's concern was genuine, unlike the manufactured interest my mother showed when she asked about my business. Family issues, I replied, my voice hoarse from screaming. Say no more, Rosa said. We've got everything covered. Take care of yourself. That was the difference. My employees respected me. They saw the value in what we did. Why couldn't my own family? My apartment felt like a cage as I paced from room to room, replaying every slight, every dismissive comment from my mother and sister over the years. The increasing distance as Ashley climbed the corporate ladder while I built my cleaning service from the ground up. The canceled family dinners. The unanswered calls. I had known for months about Ashley's engagement to Brandon Harrington. Mom had called me, her voice tight with forced enthusiasm, to share the news. But there had been no invitation to engagement parties, no calls for sisterly advice. Now I knew why. How could a dead woman attend her sister's wedding? I pulled out old photo albums, finding pictures of Ashley and me as children. Building sandcastles at the beach. Riding bikes down our neighborhood street. Opening Christmas presents in matching pajamas. When had it changed? When had she decided I wasn't worth acknowledging? Sleep eluded me that night. Instead, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights, wondering how many people like me, the invisible ones who kept the world running, were out there, unappreciated and unseen. On the second day, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Melissa, she breathed when I picked up. We need to talk. About my tragic passing? The words came out sharper than I intended. A long pause. How did you? William Harrington is my client, Mom. He owns the building my company services. He told me about Ashley's poor, dead sister. Another pause. Then, it's complicated, Melissa. Is it? Because it seems pretty simple to me. You're ashamed of what I do for a living. That's not fair, isn't it? My voice rose dangerously. You lied about me being dead rather than admit your daughter cleans buildings for a living. Please lower your voice, she hissed. I run a successful business with 30 employees. I make 6 figures. But because I don't wear designer suits to an advertising agency, I'm an embarrassment. The Harringtons are not like us, she insisted. They come from old money, they have expectations, and apparently honesty isn't one of them, I snapped. Does Ashley's precious fiancé know his bride is a liar? Don't you dare ruin this for her, Mom's voice turned cold. She has a chance at a wonderful life. And I don't? Because I clean for a living? Someone has to clean the world, Mom. Someone has to mop the floors and scrub the toilets in those fancy office buildings where Ashley pitches ad campaigns. Melissa, please, I hung up and threw the phone across the room, where it hit the wall with a satisfying crack. By the third day, rage had crystallized into something colder and more dangerous: purpose. I looked up the details of Ashley and Brandon's wedding online and discovered they were having a pre-wedding celebration at the Beacon Hill Hotel that very evening. In my closet hung a dress I'd bought for a charity gala last year. Black, fitted, elegant. Nothing like the practical uniforms I wore to work. I slipped it on, the silk cool against my skin. As I stood before the mirror applying makeup, I hardly recognized myself. Good. Tonight was about being someone new. Someone who refused to stay dead. I took extra care with my appearance, styling my hair in loose waves instead of my normal practical ponytail. Diamond studs, my one splurge after signing my first major contract, glittered in my ears. When I was finished, the woman in the mirror looked like she belonged at a high society event. But the steel in her eyes, that belonged to Melissa Frost, cleaning company owner, who had fought for every inch of ground she'd gained in life. At the hotel, I hesitated only once, hand on the gleaming door to the ballroom. Then I saw William Harrington approaching from across the lobby, his face lighting with recognition. Melissa! What a pleasant surprise. He smiled warmly, then lowered his voice. I wasn't sure if you'd come, but I'm glad you did. After our conversation, I made some inquiries. I hope you don't mind. Inquiries? I asked, heart racing. Family is complicated, he continued, giving my arm a gentle squeeze. But lies don't simplify matters, they only delay the inevitable. He nodded toward the ballroom. Shall we? And that's how I found myself standing in the doorway, William Harrington beside me, watching my mother's face collapse in horror as her lie came crashing down around her. The next moments unfolded in slow motion. Ashley recovered first, plastering on a bright smile and hurrying toward us, her fiancé trailing behind her with confusion written across his face. Melissa! What a surprise! Her voice was brittle as glass. She reached to hug me, whispering fiercely in my ear, "What the hell are you doing here?" I stepped back, keeping my voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. I heard there was a celebration for my sister's wedding. Strange I wasn't invited. Brandon looked between us, frowning. Ashley, who is this? No one, Ashley began, but William cut her off. This is Melissa Frost, he said firmly. Ashley's sister. The one who supposedly died in a car accident. The room seemed to still, conversations dropping to murmurs as heads turned our way. Brandon's face registered shock, then confusion, then anger. What is he talking about? My mother appeared at Ashley's side, her face pale but composed. William, this is hardly the place for truth. I interrupted. When exactly is the right place for truth, Mom? Because apparently my funeral happened without me knowing it. Brandon turned to Ashley, his expression hardening. You told me your sister died years ago. I can explain, Ashley pleaded, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. Please do. She looked at me, then at our mother, panic rising in her eyes. It's just, we thought, Mom thought, they were ashamed, I said flatly. Of me. Of what I do for a living. And, what exactly do you do? Brandon asked, looking at me directly. I lifted my chin. I run Pristine Property Services. We clean commercial buildings across Boston, including your father's corporate headquarters. Brandon's eyebrows shot up, and he turned to his father. Dad? William nodded. Melissa's company has serviced Harrington Tower for 3 years. They're the best in the business. You clean buildings? Brandon asked, still processing. Yes, I answered, my voice gaining strength. I started as a janitor at 16. Worked my way up to supervisor, then operations manager. Took out loans, started my own company, built it from the ground up. Now I employ 30 people and service 12 major properties in downtown Boston. And that was worth lying about? Brandon asked Ashley. Worth pretending she was dead? Ashley at least had the decency to look ashamed. It wasn't my idea, but you went along with it. I cut in. You stood there while Mom told them I died in some fictional car crash, and you said nothing. My mother stepped forward, her social mask finally cracking. It wasn't like that, Melissa. The Harringtons, they're different from us. They have expectations, standards. And honesty isn't one of them. William's voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. He turned to me. Miss Frost, I apologize for what you've been put through. No one should have their existence erased, especially not by their own family. The room had grown silent, everyone watching our family drama unfold. I felt a curious calm settle over me, the rage that had propelled me here transmuting into something else. Not forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, but clarity. I came here tonight, I said, looking at my mother and sister, because I wanted to see your faces when your lie was exposed. But now that I'm here, I realize something. I took a deep breath. I'm not the one who should be ashamed. I built something from nothing. I provide good jobs with benefits to people who need them. I take pride in work that others look down on. The world doesn't function without people like me and my team. I turned back to my family. What exactly should I be ashamed of? That I work with my hands? That I understand the value of clean spaces? That I chose to build something of my own instead of climbing someone else's corporate ladder? Mom wouldn't meet my eyes, but Ashley finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant. I just wanted them to accept me. By denying me. I stated it as the simple fact it was. Brandon stepped closer to Ashley. If you could lie about something this fundamental, your own sister's existence, what else have you lied about? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Ashley's perfectly manicured hands twisted together, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. I never lied about anything else, she said, her voice small. I swear. Brandon's jaw tightened. How would I know? How could I possibly trust that? William cleared his throat. I think perhaps we all need time to process this. He turned to address the crowd. My friends, please enjoy the rest of your evening. Family matters sometimes require privacy. As the guests reluctantly turned away, William guided me to a quiet corner of the ballroom. I want you to know that I admire what you've built. True success comes from hard work and integrity, not from hiding uncomfortable truths. I blinked back unexpected tears. Thank you. Brandon needs time to think about what kind of marriage he'd be entering, William continued. A foundation built on such a significant lie, well, it raises questions. I hadn't come here to destroy my sister's engagement, but I couldn't pretend to be sorry about the cracks now showing in its facade. You intended to reclaim your existence, he said simply. No one can fault you for that. Across the room, I could see my mother comforting a weeping Ashley while Brandon stood apart, arms crossed, face thunderous. I should go, I said quietly. William nodded. Do you have business cards? I know several people who could use your services. A startled laugh escaped me. I reached into my small clutch and produced a card. Always prepared. As I moved toward the exit, I passed close to where my mother and sister stood. Ashley looked up, her eyes red and pleading. Melissa, please, I paused. You know what hurts the most? You could have just told them the truth. You could have been proud of me. I would have been proud of you. With that, I walked out of the ballroom, head high. Behind me, I heard my name called, my mother's voice, but I didn't turn around. For 34 years, I had been the one looking back, seeking approval, hoping for acceptance. Tonight, finally, I was moving forward. Outside, the cool night air hit my flushed face. I was halfway to the valet stand when I heard footsteps behind me. Ms. Frost. I turned to find Brandon Harrington walking toward me. I have nothing more to say, I told him. But I do. He stopped. I'm sorry. That caught me off guard. You have nothing to apologize for. I do, though. I should have known. The way Ashley always changed the subject when I asked about her family. His jaw tightened. I don't care what you do for a living. My grandfather was a janitor before he started his construction company. Thank you, I managed, touched by his sincerity. He nodded and turned to go back inside, then paused. Your company, do you do residential jobs too? Despite everything, I found myself falling into professional mode. We mainly focus on commercial properties, but we do have a residential division for high-end homes. I might need your services. The corner of his mouth lifted in a humorless smile. I have a feeling I'm going to be moving out of our shared apartment. Later, in my apartment, I kicked off my heels and peeled off the elegant dress, replacing it with worn jeans and a t-shirt, my real clothes, my real life. My phone had been buzzing all evening. Ashley, Mom, even texts from Brandon. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the schedule for tomorrow's cleaning routes. 12 buildings, 30 employees, one company that I had built from nothing. My legacy, my truth. My phone rang again. Ashley's face flashed on the screen. This time, I answered. What? Mel, please. Her voice was raw from crying. Can we talk? I think we said everything that needed saying. No. I need to explain what, Ash? Why you pretended I was dead. It wasn't about shame. Not exactly. Then what was it about? Jealousy. The word was so unexpected, I almost dropped the phone. Mom was always so proud of you. So impressed by how you built your business from nothing, how independent you are. I barked out a laugh. That's bullshit. Mom has spent my entire life wishing I was more like you. That's what she wanted you to think. But in private? It was always, Melissa's so brave. Melissa doesn't need anyone. Do you have any idea what it's like living in that shadow? So you decided to erase me completely? A long silence. That was my idea. The admission hit me like a physical blow. What? Not the dead part, that was Mom improvising. But hiding you, that was me. I told her I didn't want you at the engagement dinner. Why, Ashley? What did I ever do to you? You were always so perfect, she burst out. So self-sufficient. So sure of yourself. I've spent my life trying to be what everyone expected, and you just did whatever you wanted and somehow ended up successful anyway. The truth of her insecurity hit harder than any lie. This whole time, I'd thought she was ashamed of me. In reality, she was terrified of herself, of the part of her that might not fit the mold she was trying so desperately to pour herself into. If Brandon's family would reject you because your sister owns a cleaning company, why would you want to marry into that family? They're not like that, she protested. Brandon isn't like that. You saw him tonight. I got scared. I wanted everything to be perfect. Well, congratulations. Now it's perfectly ruined. She started crying again. The wedding's off. Brandon won't even talk to me. A small, petty part of me wanted to say, good, but the bigger part just felt tired. That's not my problem, Ash. Please, she begged. Help me fix this. If he sees that we've reconciled, we haven't reconciled, I interrupted. And I'm not going to pretend we have so you can salvage your relationship. You made your choice when you decided to erase me. I never thought it would go this far, she whispered. I never thought Mom would say you were dead. Being sorry doesn't fix this, Ashley. I sighed. I need to go. Melissa, please. I hung up, set my phone down carefully, and stared at the wall. 10 years of building my business. 34 years of being the responsible sister, the steady one, the rock. And all it took was one dinner for my existence to be erased by the people who were supposed to love me most. Tomorrow, I would wake up at 5 a.m. as I did every day. I would check the morning shift reports, review new contracts, approve the supply orders. I would stop by client sites to do quality checks. I would have lunch with my accountant to discuss quarterly taxes. I would return calls, answer emails, solve problems, keep building. I might be the family's shameful secret, but I was done living in shadows. The fallout came faster than I expected. By 9 a.m. the next morning, my phone was ringing with a number I didn't recognize. Pristine Property Services, this is Melissa, I answered in my professional voice. Miss Frost, this is Spencer Williams, society editor for the Boston Herald. My blood ran cold. How did you get this number? I was at the Harrington Frost pre-wedding celebration last night, he said, ignoring my question. Quite the dramatic scene. Care to comment on your family's attempt to erase your existence? No comment, I said automatically. And if you print anything about me or my company without permission, I'll sue. 3 more reporters called before noon. Apparently, my family drama was considered newsworthy. Rosa fielded most of them while I hid in my office trying to focus on work and not on the implosion of my private life. At 2 p.m., my mother showed up at the office. Miss Frost, your mother is here to see you. My receptionist's voice came through the intercom. The formality in her tone told me she'd been briefed on the situation. I considered saying I was in a meeting, but that would just delay the inevitable. Send her in. Mom entered looking perfectly put together as always, tailored pantsuit, pearls, not a hair out of place. Only the redness around her eyes betrayed that anything was amiss. Melissa, she began, then stopped, looking around my office with new eyes. I've never really looked at what you've built here. I said nothing, waiting. She moved to the wall where my framed achievements hung: business license, Chamber of Commerce award, Better Business Bureau certification, letters of recommendation from satisfied clients. You've done so well, she said softly. I've always been impressed by what you've accomplished. Funny way of showing it, I replied coldly. She turned to face me. I deserved that. I deserved worse, actually. Why did you do it, Mom? Why tell people I was dead? She sank into the chair opposite my desk. I panicked. Ashley didn't want you at the dinner. She was afraid, I know. She told me. She was afraid the Harringtons would think she might be like me. Mom winced. It wasn't about your job, Melissa. Not really. Then what was it about? Your independence. Your refusal to care what people think. Ashley has always cared so much about appearances, about fitting in. And you. She gestured helplessly. You never did. You just forged your own path. I leaned back in my chair, studying the woman who had raised me. So when she asked you to hide me, you just went along with it? I said we should just tell them you couldn't make it. Ashley wanted me to say you lived out of state. Then William Harrington asked directly if Ashley had siblings, and I panicked. I said she had a sister who died years ago. It was terrible, unforgivable. But once I said it, I couldn't take it back. I stared at her, seeing for the first time how small she looked. How old? How far from the confident woman who had dominated my childhood. You could have fixed it later. You could have told the truth. And admit I'd lied? To the Harringtons? She shook her head. I was a coward, Melissa. I was trying to protect Ashley's chance at a secure future, and I failed both of you. I wanted to stay angry. Anger was clean, simple. This muddy mixture of pity and disappointment was harder to navigate. Ashley says the wedding's been postponed. Mom nodded. Indefinitely. Brandon isn't answering her calls. William has been surprisingly kind about the whole thing, but he's made it clear that honesty is non-negotiable in their family. A bitter laugh escaped me. Imagine that. I'm sorry, she said, the words awkward on her tongue. I've never been as proud of you as I should have been. But I've never been ashamed. Not really. Just not proud enough to admit what I actually do. I was wrong, she admitted. Seeing you last night, standing up for yourself, so confident and articulate. I was proud, Melissa. And ashamed of myself. I didn't know what to say to that. Mom reached across the desk, hesitating before touching my hand. Can we start over? Can you forgive me? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe eventually. But not today. She nodded, accepting this. I understand. She stood to leave, then paused. Your business, it's really impressive. You've built something real here. Yes, I agreed. I have. After she left, I sat for a long time looking out my office window at the Boston skyline. So many of those gleaming buildings were serviced by my company. So many spaces made clean and functional because of work done by people society looked down on. Essential work. Dignified work. My phone buzzed with a text from William Harrington. MIT contract is officially yours. Board was impressed by your proposal and your personal integrity. Congratulations. I smiled, a small, private victory. Maybe the wedding was off, but my business was thriving. Maybe my family relationships were damaged beyond repair, but my professional reputation was stronger than ever. The dead sister had risen, stepping out of the shadows and into her own light. 6 months later, I stood in the vast atrium of MIT's newest research building, watching as my team prepared for the opening gala. The contract had expanded from 3 buildings to 5, and Pristine Property Services had grown to 45 employees. "Everything looks perfect, Ms. Frost," the facilities director said. "The Harringtons spoke very highly of your company." I nodded, professional as always, though the mention of the Harrington name still triggered a complex emotional response. William had recommended my services to several high-profile clients. Brandon had hired my residential division to clean his new apartment after moving out of the place he'd shared with Ashley. And Ashley, well, that was complicated. "Melissa?" I turned to find my sister standing by the entrance, looking uncertain. She'd been doing that a lot lately, showing up at client sites when she knew I'd be there, trying to rebuild our relationship one awkward conversation at a time. "I was in the area," she explained. "Thought I'd see how the new site was coming along." "Just fine," I said, gesturing to the space around us. "We're ready for tomorrow's event." We stood in silence. 6 months of these encounters had worn down the sharp edges of my anger, but the gulf between us remained. "Brandon called," she said finally. "He wants to talk." "Oh!" I kept my tone neutral. "I don't think we're getting back together. But he wants closure." "That's good," I offered. "I've been thinking a lot about truth lately. About who I am versus who I tried to be." I waited, sensing she had more to say. I was so caught up in appearances, in being the perfect daughter with the perfect job and the perfect fiancé. I never stopped to ask if that's what I actually wanted. She laughed, a brittle sound. "Turns out it wasn't." "What do you want, Ashley?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I'm figuring it out. Starting with being honest about who I am and where I come from. Including being proud of my sister, the successful business owner. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. But it was a start." "There's an industry dinner next month," I said carefully. "Would you want to come?" "As my guest." Her eyes widened with surprise, then filled with tears. "I'd be honored." As we walked out of the building together, I felt something shift. The dead sister had not only risen, but was bringing others into the light with her. My mother had started actually telling her friends what my company did. Ashley was learning to be authentic rather than perfect. The family secret was out. The shame was gone. And in its place was something new, the possibility of a relationship built on truth instead of appearances. The cleaning lady's daughter had finally come clean. And in the clarity of that honesty, everything shone.